Hello, Taurus. Welcome to the Plaid Sheep Oracle. Facing the other way for logistical reasons. And it's been kind of interesting to do things differently, right? You can get set in your ways. I can certainly get set in my ways. Useful to shake it up, do it a bit differently. So your reading is kind of obscure. I have a sort of a beginning sense of it, but we're going to see what happens as we go. It feels as if it's just going to unfold. That trying to figure it out beforehand is not the way to go. We begin with this mermaid. And I should actually say we have the mermaid, which says beauty. We have Scylla, which says resilience. But this image doesn't really say that, does it? Right? This image says something quite different. I find that sort of true in this deck. It's almost as if something else is trying to come through and ignoring kind of the deck designer's intent. There's something else wanting to be seen. And then on the underside is this thatch, which says mirror, and is about illusions and something that tries to fool you. So Scylla was this nymph who gets transformed into a monster. And actually, I mean, this is sort of a Medusa kind of thing with snakes for hair, but in fact, she was a monster that had 6 heads. She was more like the Hydra. And she dwelt on this island, and then on the other side of this strait, this narrow passageway of water, was Charybdis, a massive whirlpool. And so there's the image trapped between Scylla and Charybdis. But there's something about that isn't right? This is the illusion. Because what's really here is this beauty. And what strikes me about her is that a lot of her is below the water. That something is unseen. You know, I want to say that you are not the mermaid, that you're actually here in this ship. That maybe you feel as if you are trying to sail between Scylla and Charybdis, between two overwhelming challenges. But one of them is not what it seems, at least. Because Scylla here is not at all terrible. In fact, quite the opposite. She is distraught. She might perhaps be in despair. The reason the author gives for resilience is that people try to kill Scylla, but they can't do it. That even Hercules kills her at some point, but her father shows up and brings her back to life. Although not as herself, as the monster. which doesn't really seem right. But, right, so there's this, right, resilience in the face of attack. And so there's something about that, too. That maybe you feel as if you've been under assault in some way. But that is an illusion. that the difficulty that's being faced is not what it appears to be. You know, this Scylla seems like if you went and were kind to her, if you saw, right, if you saw her soul, if you spoke kindly and gently to her rather than trying to, you know, chop her heads off, that she would respond to that. So that you aren't, there is not this need to battle something. So this card is We Are Nature. Becoming grounded, embodiment, living in connection. So feeling yourself. It's almost, there's a little, right, there's a big, right, a larger figure. And then there's this little figure here. And this almost seems to me today, or I guess not almost, but it seems to me like something trying to come out. To be seen. Something that you've been keeping to yourself. Something that is part of your true nature that you have not allowed out for some reason. The card right below it is Bloom. Yeah? Open. Open fully. And the underside is the Reunion. Soul recognition, collaboration, partnership, friendship. And the allowing of some other aspect of yourself to come out. Here with these two figures as well, to see for the first time what is real rather than what the fetch, the illusion might have been telling you. And then we have the Thorn. Protection, boundaries, clear communication. You know, and I've been thinking lately, due to some things I've been listening to and thoughts in my own mind, that, you know, this idea of boundaries is important. But like everything else, it can get taken too far. And we can start to approach relationships from this really defensive posture. Certainly if we've had, you know, relationship troubles in the past from our family, you know, if people like to interfere or attempt to control, that we can feel as if we have to erect boundaries. But it can become, right, it can become a way of life. These boundaries, you can sort of enter every relationship, even before you know what's going on, with these boundaries really set. I knew a person some years ago who had these kind of really proactive boundaries that were just out there. And it meant that, you know, people were kind of afraid of her, actually. They didn't want to ask her for anything, even if it was her job. You know, she was very serious about not doing anything that wasn't her job. And I could understand that. But this very aggressive boundary that she had meant that people didn't even want to ask her to do the things that were her job. And then it actually ended up making her job more difficult because she didn't find out about things until they'd already progressed to a worse state. You know, people just sort of avoided her sometimes. And it also makes me think of this Star Trek episode from Star Trek The Next Generation in the second season, when the ship comes upon an experiment where some people have been doing this genetic manipulation experiment with some children, where they've given these children aggressive immune systems. And what actually happens is that because the immune system doesn't wait for something to come to it, it actually goes out and attacks things. And the result of this is a whole new disease that attacks people. So these unintended consequences, and also the result of, you know, kind of assuming that somebody is coming to get you and proactively, it's like shooting your thorns or covering yourself in thorns so that nothing can ever get to you. So then there's the wild rose. Do it your way. Embrace your uniqueness, untamed. And again, today, you know, this card normally comes out in this really beautiful way to me. You know, this idea of self-expression and of feeling free. But today it's feeling, right, sort of like feral or, you know, if you know anybody who does rescue with animals, particularly cats, right, that you adopt a feral cat and they're so aggressive because they're afraid. And they've taken this on as protection. And you know that all you want to do is give them love. But it takes a long time. And sometimes, you know, years before the cat can release that aggression. And that's kind of, right, like this do it your way, embrace your uniqueness, feels to me aggressive today. Like, you know, walking into a room, assuming that everybody's going to try and suppress you, you know, or not let you speak, and then just sort of yelling over everybody. Because you're, you know, you're so tense, so tight, just presuming that the world is going to attack you, that you know, you kind of plant your flag really aggressively everywhere you go. And this may not be coming out like in a really physical or obvious way. This could be really subconscious. You know, just some thoughts that you have when you go places, or, you know, your energy when you enter a space. It isn't, you know, it may not appear aggressive to anybody else, but you are on the defensive. And so your whole system is on the defensive. And that may be causing you more problems than you realize. And so we have the Sub Rosa card. Hidden in plain sight, mysteries, learning and teaching. So this thing, this, right, this sense of defensiveness, this sense of there always being imminent danger, or like you're going to have to sail through this thing. And maybe it's just something particular. Or it could be some space, right? Maybe it's always your family. You know, and your mother is Scylla, and your brother is Charybdis, and you might have to find your way through them all the time, or at least, right? But that the effects of this, and then maybe even that this is happening, this conviction that you have to pass through this dangerous space, is affecting you in ways that you can't even see. Seeing choices as inherently difficult. Like, this is hard in one way, and this is hard in another way, and there's nothing else. But then we have the Lovers. And the Lovers is about choices. But about choosing from a place of joy. Choosing from a space of love. Maybe even in difficult situations. Rather than meeting these difficulties with a warrior kind of stance, as, Odysseus or Hercules. That you would meet it differently because at least one of them is not what it appears to be. At least one of them may be something completely different. So seeing if there's a way to look at the choices differently. To ask yourself, how am I seeing these things? Do I usually see them this way? When I encounter something, do I tend to get into a defensive posture? Even if it's only in my own mind. Right, below that, we have this 3 of materials. Cooperation. Right, the road of roses. And what's interesting is that below it is the 5 of materials. And the 5 of materials has this person who's all, sort of curled up in a fetal position. Perhaps defensive. Here's somebody maybe trying to reach out to them and is afraid of getting bitten. But then there's this, right? There's this, what always looks like music to me, right? It's like a musical notation, the scale. And then there's this, right? So it's like this music is calling you to go through the doorway, right? That's lined with roses, to continue to follow the roses, right? To follow the blooming. Rather than the thorns, rather, or the swords in your own mind. Below that actually is, right, this page of materials, right, right, filling your mind with, right, with the rose, with the beauty. So that you kind of, right, you become covered in beauty. And the bottom of the deck is the 6 of inspiration. Being seen, feeling confident, not feeling like you have to, pass through Scylla and Charybdis. But instead there's these, right, there's these 2 lines of people who are welcoming you. Maybe it's not this at all, right? That neither side is what you think it is. Ace of Emotions, Ace of Cups. And here it always seems to me, right, like she's broken through the water and finally taken a breath. That she's finally taken a real breath. Like maybe she never has before in her life. Not feeling this sense of attack from all over. Feeling more like the world is a friendly place. A beautiful place. And then the High Priestess. There's something here about an activation. About this moon activating something in you, in how you touch the world. And I mean that in every sense, both literal and metaphorical. How you touch the world will affect how the world touches you back. And that this moon, this deep emotion, this feeling, also this feeling and the Lovers, that is going to activate this touch in you. And then with Eight of Emotions, that you can kind of come into a new space. Something that's totally different, that it transforms the world around you. Resets the world around you. Coming into just seeing everything differently. The Fool, of course, setting out for new. And below that, doubling down with May Timid Wings Awaken. And then getting more excited with the Queen of Wands. I'll come back to the bottom of the deck. And then we have the World. Not so much an ending here, but this reimagining of what the world is like. When you meet the world with this moon-activated touch, when you meet the world as your lover, then what you get is kindred, right? That everything becomes more like your kindred. And like your ideal kindred, not your actual family, as you encounter them now, if it's your family that feels like Scylla and Charybdis. But that ideal sense of kindred, of family. And then this Temperance card, which isn't so much about temperance as it is about the missing piece. Like you coming together. You receiving the missing piece. And you kind of giving it to yourself. This right? That this this passion for the world, this view of the world with a loving eye, touching the world in every way as love, as your lover, as what you love. And so then you get, I was a different person then. Now the bottom of the deck is the devil. Here, whispering bitter nothings into your ear. All of, maybe past experiences or, stuff that you hear about, habits of thought, all of these things that get whispered in your ear. And I would say that it's, that it's not, again, this is something else, not something that you should fight, right? Not battling the devil. Because the card immediately next to that is the Creatrix. So to understand, that the devil may have had a purpose in the past, to understand where these devilish thoughts and ideas come from, to allow yourself to feel them, right? To accept, to welcome the feeling when it comes, rather than trying to push it away and battle it. To even embrace the devil with love, right, is the way to soothe that. Because I think that we're human, and although encountering these moments of distress or challenge, I don't think they ever, completely go away. Because we do, encounter new contrast as we go, even if we leave the past behind. But that we can learn to soothe the devil with love. And then he doesn't hang around so long. We can, just have a short period and then find our way out much more quickly. And that it may happen less and less often as we build these pathways of love for ourselves. So then we have silence, snow, quiet, peace, a sense of lightness, right? The lightness of the snow. That this is not, heavy. Below that, we have the fire of ignition. Inspiration. The bottom is the moon coming back. The basis of things. This loving eye, this emotional space. So then we have the wind and change. That seems sort of self-explanatory. Right? We have ignition, then we have change, we have passion. And then with this bushfires, what's coming through is that it, right, the fire is actually only in the photograph. Right? It seems, right, like the trees actually behind her aren't actually on fire. The fire is only in the photograph. So that any destructive things that happened are in the past, right? That they are in the past. They're in the photograph only. Right? It's also with this passion to see what is there now. To do your best to see things as clearly as you can, with considering that you may have filters that you see things through. To remember, right? Remember that things might be, it might be an illusion, it might be your past rising up. You might be mistaking the situation for something in the past. Or it may be your defensive posture. So, right, if you go in feeling defensive, that maybe that's what you'll attract, right, is stuff to defend against. So advice. Stability, sitting on top of the tower. But also below that is the Ace of Cups. And in fact, this Knight of Cups. Right, in this peaceful place. And I'm going to go one more, the Queen of Wands repeating. Right, in this open heart posture. So is it a tower? Or is it actually the Ace of Cups? What are you seeing? Right, find some stability before judging things. On the bottom is both this Five of Pentacles repeating and the Devil again. So seeing what is really there, not what was there in the past. Finding your own ground. Finding your own calm space. Your own stability before you really have a look at something. What is it really? And then we have death, which just transform. But a little bit is, I think I have a lot of Taurus energy myself, so I feel that it can take time for Taurus to transform. The transformative process can be lengthy sometimes. But just keep letting it go. Let it go. Right? Let all the flowers grow. Let yourself transform. And celebrate everything. Every time something good happens. Every time you manage to see things through this loving lens. That you see perhaps that Scylla is just someone who needs a little extra care and love. That, right, if you approach her in love, that she may be transformed. And every time you can do that, every time it happens, celebrate it in whatever way you want. And then the beginning's the Fool. Begin again and again and again. Right? Every time you're going to get farther. I had this vision this morning of, right, the crabs in a bucket. Or actually in that Dark Knight movie, where he has to right, where everybody's trying to climb out of that prison that's somewhere in the desert. But then every time, right, he goes, he gets a little bit higher. So keep going. Beginning every time. Because each time you begin, you're a little further along. And then there's the perspective card, of course. How do you see it? How do you see it? What do you tell yourself about it? What is your posture, your energetic posture? How do you enter into the situation? How do you see it, Taurus? So, I don't know, Taurus, if there's something in particular that's very daunting to you, or if this is more general for you. But I hope that this has been helpful, that you can see more clearly what is really there. And then maybe you see a way forward that you hadn't previously. I wish you all the very, very best, Taurus, and I'll see you next time. So long.